And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It is the 53rd anniversary today. Today, the day that President Obama gave a speech on the NSA, and the NSA, which is like, 70% of their budget is going to private contractors like the company that Ed Snowden used to work for, Booz Allen Hamilton, which used to be owned in part by the Carlyle Group, which was owned in part by the bin Laden family. Anyhow, this is the 53rd anniversary of this speech by Dwight Eisenhower. It was his farewell address. It was 1961. John Kennedy had been elected in the election of 1960, in November of 1960. And he was, and Dwight Eisenhower was saying goodbye as Kennedy was being sworn in as president. I mean, they not concurrent. 3 days difference. Thank you. But anyhow, here is Dwight Eisenhower. He starts out kind of setting the table, as it were, sort of like Obama did in his speech earlier today, where only President Obama, started talking about Paul Revere. Here's Dwight Eisenhower talking about how, as a result of World War II and the rise of the Soviet Union, basically we have a very different world than we had just 40 years ago, or less. And so we actually have the necessity of a certain level of military that we didn't have before. Here he is.
Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry.
Wow.
American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well.
This is all before World War II.
But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society.
And then Eisenhower said, but let's be careful.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
And then he continues along those lines in parts that typically are not played on the radio and TV today.
As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government, must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow.
So let's not bankrupt ourselves with a huge military-industrial complex.
During the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. Together we must learn how to compose differences, not with arms, but with intellect and decent purpose.
Which I would say President Obama is trying to do with Iran right now. And then Eisenhower offers a prayer for the future.
May we be ever unswerving in devotion to principle, confident but humble with power, diligent in pursuit of the nation's great goals. To all the peoples of the world, I once more give expression to America's prayerful and continuing aspiration. We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth.
He was a Republican.
And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect.
Can you imagine a Republican today talking like that? They would be run out of the party so fast. A lot of Democrats wouldn't even make it talking like that. Peace, love, respect. Let us never forget the spiritual influence. I mean, here, this.
In the American experience, the total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government.
He's talking about the military-industrial complex. And he comes right out and he says, before World War II, we did not have a permanent arms industry. Can you imagine America without companies that do nothing but make weapons of war? That's how we were from 1787 until roughly 1950. 1945, let's say, 46. And as Eisenhower correctly pointed out, the companies that became war, manufacturers of weapons of war during World War II were makers of plowshares before. The car company started making tanks, and the commercial airplane companies started making bombers, and the ladies' nylon companies started making parachutes. And the companies that made clothes and, that made jeans and shirts started making uniforms. And it just, this is what we did to fight and win World War II. We did not have a permanent arms industry. And now we have not only the permanent arms industry, but we have that military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about, that this Republican president in 1961 warned us about as he was leaving office. The guy, and not just a Republican president, but the guy who had successfully led the invasion of Europe during World War II, who, along with the Russians coming from the other direction, took down Hitler. He's one of the most decorated generals in the history of America. Somebody who you'd have a hard time saying, oh, Eisenhower, he doesn't know anything about the military. I mean, why should we take advice from that guy? And it is that over and over again you find that it is the military people who have seen the horrors of war who are very often the most outspoken about the need for peace and the need not to create institutions that are just going to lead to future war.